between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong represents revolution and internal strife in China. But it also has subtle undertones of a conflict between, well, maybe not so subtle undertones, of conflict between communism and democracy, as you can see by the supporters of each leader. The Korean War is maybe a more direct and obvious conflict between communism and democracy, and we'll be talking about that in this presentation. Korea, after World War II, had been divided into two different countries. It was divided at the 38th parallel. North Korea, the northern part of Korea obviously, is friendly to communists, so it is a communist country. South Korea is friendly to the United States, democratic country. However, North Korea invaded South Korea, and they were actually able for a short time to take over most of South Korea, and they were doing this supported by the Soviets, using Soviet weapons. And this meant that the communists were directly supplying the North Koreans with weapons and the means to attack South Korea. The United Nations voted to allow the U.S. to give aid, but the aid did not stop the communist offensive. If you remember, General MacArthur is hanging out in Asia, and after he went into Japan to help them establish a new government, set up a constitution, he responds to this situation by attacking North Korean supply lines at the port city of Incheon. And you can see Incheon there is on the west coast of South Korea, just below the 38th parallel. The attack by the Americans caused North Korea to retreat back across the 38th parallel. So it was quite successful in gaining back territory for South Korea. However, MacArthur decides that he's going to keep pushing north, hoping to expel all the communists from all of Korea. So he wants them back into China, and not, he wants to free North Korea of communist influence. But as it gets closer to China, China decides that they're going to support the communist effort in North Korea, and they enter the war to save their communist friends. So China is able to push U.S. forces back. By 1951 to 1953, the war had stalemated near the 38th parallel. That means that neither side was making any progress. So they were both fighting, one on one side of the 38th parallel, the other on the other side of the 38th parallel, and neither were really making any gains. So by 1952, the war had become extremely unpopular in America due to the large losses of American lives. The new president, of course, we'll find out who that is in a minute, will promise to get us out of the Korean War. It's Eisenhower. President Dwight D. Eisenhower takes over the White House, and he basically decides that he's got to put an end to this war. So he does so by threatening the use of massive nuclear weapons in order to get North Korea to back off. This, combined with Stalin's death, causes the communist forces to seek peace. And that's important. Stalin's death was a huge crush, a huge blow to the communists. So when he died, of course, the USSR became slightly unstable. There was, of course, new leaders coming in, and it was a little bit of an uncertain time. So when he died, it really shook up North Korea, because they were not sure if they were going to get continued support from the Soviet Union. In the end, a ceasefire was signed, no side winning the conflict. So North Korea remained allied to both China and the USSR. It is still a communist country. South Korea remains allied to the U.S. It's a democratic country. And this is a modern day photo, so you can see that this division still lasts today. It's a bit tense, and every now and then there is a small conflict along the 38th parallel, and it usually makes U.S. news because it is such a tense situation. Of course, the Korean War has had lasting effects. It is pretty much a war that is sort of not talked about very much, but many American lives were lost during the Korean War, and there were other lasting effects as well. For example, President Truman went to war without the approval of Congress. This sets a precedent for other presidents to follow. So basically, when he sent troops into South Korea, he had not had approval from Congress. He did not have a declaration of war from Congress. And if you remember, in the Constitution, it specifically designates the power of declaring war to Congress. The war also led to a huge increase in military spending. It becomes half the federal budget. So that's enormous. It's larger than any proportion ever in the United States government's budget. We also see the establishment of Seto. Seto is similar to NATO. It's an organization that was created to protect nations from communism, only it's specifically targeted towards Asian nations. Seto stands for Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, and members include Pakistan, Thailand, Australia, and of course the Allies, France, Great Britain, and the United States. On this map you can see the countries that belong to Seto. That's it for this presentation. We'll talk more about the Korean War in class, but I hope this provides you with a general overview. We'll see you soon.